The arena of Thaloris Prime had become a place where history was unfolding. For hours, the duel between Princess Seralia and Captain Elias Ward had captivated thousands. What began as a show of Thalorian superiority had become a lesson in resilience, intelligence, and courage. The human had survived against impossible odds, and even the Thalorian spectators could no longer deny it. Humans were extraordinary. Seralia's chest heaved, her glowing blade moving with both speed and caution. Her pride demanded victory, but her mind now understood the unexpected truth. This human was not weak. He had adapted to her every move, anticipated her patterns, and endured attacks that would have defeated any other opponent. Elias, though exhausted, stood tall. Sweat ran down his face and every muscle ached, yet his eyes were sharp, his posture calm. He had no alien enhancements, no powerful weaponry, no armor like hers. His advantage had been his mind, his instincts, and his determination to endure. The crowd held its breath as the two fighters faced each other one final time. Seralia lunged faster than before, aiming her most powerful strike, a spinning slash with enough force to crush even a fully armored Thalorian soldier. Elias rolled to the side just in time, feeling the wind from her blade brush past him. He sprang to his feet, staff ready, prepared for the next attack. Seralia's eyes narrowed. Every strike she had made had been met with skill, intelligence, and endurance. She had tested countless warriors, yet none had forced her to think, adjust, and fight with such caution. Her pride was wounded, but so was her understanding. This human had shown her something new, something that even the mightiest Thalorians did not possess. Elias noticed her hesitation. For the first time he saw doubt flicker across her face. Not fear, not weakness, just the recognition that he was no ordinary human. He realized the moment had come, not to strike, not to dominate, but to show the true strength of humanity. He lowered his staff slightly, signaling respect rather than aggression. Seralia paused, surprised. The arena seemed to hold its breath. The duel had been long, exhausting, and neither fighter had yet been defeated. But Elias's choice carried a message. Strength was not just in winning, it was in knowing when to endure, when to act, and when to show mercy. Seralia's mind raced. Her pride demanded victory, yet her eyes reflected a new understanding. She had underestimated humans, assumed that survival depended solely on physical strength. Now she saw that endurance, intelligence, and courage were strengths that could rival the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Elias spoke, his voice steady and calm, carrying clearly across the arena. "Princess Seralia," he said, "strength is not always measured by how fast or hard one can strike. It is measured by how much one can endure, how wisely one can act, and how courageously one can face what seems impossible. That is the human way." The crowd was silent, absorbing his words. Even the Thalorian nobles whispered among themselves. Humans, fragile, small, unarmed, had survived where many thought they would fail. And now the human had spoken words that reflected not just survival but understanding. Seralia lowered her blade slowly, her silver armor catching the sunlight. She stared at Elias, a mixture of awe and respect in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she faced an opponent she could not underestimate, a being whose strength was not in the body but in the mind and spirit. You are remarkable, human," she said, her voice quieter than before, carrying sincerity. "I underestimated your kind. Today you have shown that humans are not weak. You are strong, clever, and brave. You endure where others fail." Elias nodded. "I do what humans have always done, Princess. We survive, we adapt, we endure. That is how we face impossible odds." The arena erupted in applause, cheers, and astonished murmurs. Thousands had witnessed something extraordinary. A human standing against the greatest Thalorian warrior and surviving not through sheer strength, but through endurance, intelligence, and courage. Seralia's expression softened. She extended, her hand not in attack but in respect. Elias hesitated only for a moment before taking it. The gesture symbolized more than the end of a duel. It symbolized recognition, understanding, and the bridging of two worlds. The Thalorian spectators, initially entertained by what they expected to be a quick victory, now cheered not just for the princess, but for the human who had endured. Whispers spread throughout the Empire. Perhaps humans are stronger than we thought. Perhaps they are worth respect. Seralia spoke again, addressing the crowd. Today, we have witnessed more than a duel. We have seen that strength comes in many forms. The human has shown courage, endurance, and intelligence that surpass mere physical ability. Let this be a lesson to all of us. Do not judge a being by size, species, or appearance. True strength lies in heart and mind. The spectators roared, clapping and cheering. Some Thalorians shook their heads in disbelief, but even they could not deny what they had seen. Humans had survived, adapted, and triumphed in a way that even the most skilled warriors could not have predicted. Elias lowered his staff fully, exhausted, but victorious in spirit. He had not destroyed his opponent, yet he had proven a truth, greater than victory itself. Humanity was special. Humans could endure, adapt, and rise above expectations. They could face impossible odds and survive, not through brute strength but through courage, intelligence, and determination. Seralia sheathed her blade, a rare smile appearing on her face. She had learned a valuable lesson. Humans were not weak, fragile, or inferior. They possessed a strength that few species, no matter how advanced, could match. And she knew that the galaxy would remember this duel for generations. Elias and Seralia stood together briefly in the center of the arena, the sun shining on them both. The duel had ended, but its impact would last far longer than any single battle. Humans had shown what it truly meant to endure, to adapt, and to be courageous in the face of overwhelming odds. From that day forward, the Thalorian Empire treated humans with a new respect. They were no longer seen as fragile newcomers, but as beings capable of remarkable strength and resilience. Seralia herself became an ally and friend to humans, and her respect for them never wavered. As Elias left the arena, he felt a deep pride, not in defeating his opponent, but in demonstrating the human spirit. Strength was more than muscle, more than speed, more than weapons. It was endurance, courage, and the will to never give up. And humans, he knew, had all of that in abundance. The galaxy would remember the day a human stood against the Starblade Princess, survived, and taught even the greatest warriors that true strength comes in many forms. That day, humans had proven why they were special. The sun set over Thaloris Prime, casting long shadows over the arena. The duel was over, but the story would echo across stars, a testament to endurance, courage, and the unyielding human spirit. And somewhere deep inside, Elias knew this was only the beginning of humanity's place in the galaxy, respected, enduring, and never underestimated again. The galaxy was wide, filled with many races, many empires, and endless stories of conquest. Among all of them, the Thalorian Empire stood high above the rest. Their fleets were unmatched, their armies feared, and their princess, Seralia, was the jewel of their pride. She was not only heir to the throne but also a warrior whose skill in combat had never been challenged. Her victories in duels were legendary, and she was known across worlds as the Starblade Princess. The Thalorians were taller, stronger, and faster than most species. Their very biology gave them an advantage that few could rival. To them, humans were seen as weak newcomers. Humans had only recently joined the Great Council of Races, and though their technology was improving, they were still thought of as fragile creatures, too soft to compete with giants like the Thalorians. It was during a grand diplomatic gathering on the shining capital world of Thaloris Prime that fate decided to weave a new tale. The great hall was filled with ambassadors, warriors, and nobles. The air shimmered with music and laughter as the Empire celebrated another victory over a rival power. At the center, Princess Seralia stood, her silver armor catching the light. her blade resting at her side. She carried herself with confidence that came from endless triumphs. Across the hall, a group of humans stood together. They had been invited to show respect, though everyone knew they were not treated as equals. Their leader was Admiral Kessler, a stern diplomat, while beside him stood Captain Elias Ward, a soldier chosen as part of the honor guard. He wore no armor of gold, no shining marks of nobility, only the uniform of a human officer, plain and practical. Ceralia's eyes rested on the humans, and a small smile curved her lips. She raised her voice so the hall could hear. "Humans," she said, her tone smooth but sharp. "You walk among us as if you are our equals, yet you are small, fragile, and slow. Tell me, why should the Thalorian Empire ever see your kind as anything but children playing at war?" The hall erupted in laughter. Many aliens nodded, agreeing with their princess. Humans kept their heads low, but the words struck them hard. Admiral Kessler tried to reply with calm diplomacy. "Princess Ceralia, humanity seeks peace and alliance, not rivalry. We are not here to compare strength, but to share." But Ceralia cut him off with a wave of her hand. "Strength decides who survives, Admiral. Words mean little if you cannot defend them." Her eyes gleamed with challenge. She turned and looked directly at Captain Elias Ward. Though dozens of humans stood there, her gaze chose him. "You there," she said, pointing. "Do you carry courage as your people claim, or only the tongue of your diplomat? Stand and prove it. Face me in the arena. Let all here see what a human can do." The hall grew silent for a heartbeat, then filled with whispers and cheers. A duel? Between the alien princess and a human soldier? It was madness. The Thalorians were warriors beyond compare. No human could hope to last against her, not even for a single minute. Admiral Kessler stepped forward quickly. "Princess, this is not the time or place," but Elias raised a hand, stopping him. His expression was calm, almost too calm. He looked at Ceralia with steady eyes, not bowing, not flinching. "If it is your wish, Princess, then I will stand," the crowd roared. With excitement, Ceralia's smile widened. "Good. Then tomorrow at the break of the second sun we shall duel before the Empire. And when you fall, all shall know that humans are nothing more than whispers in the wind." Elias only nodded. He said nothing more, but his silence carried weight. That night, whispers spread through the capital. The story of the coming duel reached every corner of the city. People laughed, made bets, and joked about how quickly the human would fall. "Not even a minute," they said. "The princess will strike once and it will be over." But Elias did not fear. In the quiet of his chamber, he cleaned his simple gear, checked his boots, and stretched his muscles. He carried no advanced weapons, no alien armor, only his training, his instincts, and his will. He thought of his people, of Earth, of the long history of humanity. They had faced extinction countless times, wars, famine, disasters, and yet they always endured. The Thalorians believed strength was only in muscle and speed. Elias knew otherwise. Strength was in adaptation, in the mind, in the heart that refused to give up. The next morning, the great arena of Thaloris Prime shone like a sunlit jewel. Thousands gathered in the stands. The banners of the Empire flew high, and the ground was polished smooth for combat. The air carried the sound of drums, steady and strong, as if the Empire itself beat with excitement. Ceralia entered first, clad in silver armor, her blade glowing with a faint blue light. She moved with the grace of a dancer and the power of a predator. The crowd cheered wildly, chanting her name. Then Elias walked in. No glowing armor, no shining blade, only a standard combat uniform and a simple training staff he had chosen, instead of a sword. The crowd laughed at the sight. Some even booed. How could this fragile man face their radiant princess? But Elias did not look at them. His eyes were steady, his steps calm. He carried himself not as prey, but as a man who had already accepted the storm. Seralia raised her sword, pointing it toward him. Her voice rang clear across the arena. "You won't last a minute against me, human." The crowd roared in agreement. Elias lifted his staff into a ready stance. His voice was quiet, but it carried to her ears. "We'll see." The drum stopped. The duel was about to begin, and so the challenge was set, a battle not just of strength and speed, but of pride and survival. In that moment, the galaxy watched a human stand against an empire, and history prepared to turn its page. The arena was silent now. The kind of silence that felt heavier than any roar of a crowd. Thousands of eyes fixed on the human standing in the center. The Thalorian princess, Seralia, waited across from him, her blade glowing with energy that pulsed like living fire. The sun above Thaloris Prime reflected off the polished floor, making her silver armor shimmer with a brilliance that was almost blinding. Elias Ward, the human, shifted his stance, holding his staff lightly but firmly. He was smaller than her, slower by any measure, yet there was something in his posture that drew attention. He was not afraid, and that alone unsettled some spectators. Humans were supposed to panic in the presence of a Thalorian warrior, yet here he stood, calm and focused. Seralia's lips curved into a confident smile. "You think you can survive me?" she asked, her voice carrying across the arena. "Do you know what I am capable of?" Elias did not answer. He only tightened his grip on his staff. The moment stretched for a heartbeat. Then, like lightning, Seralia lunged. Her movements were faster than the eye could follow. The crowd gasped. In the blink of an eye, she had closed the distance between them, her blade swinging in a perfect arc aimed at Elias's head. Elias rolled to the side, his body low, his staff spinning in his hands. Sparks flew as her sword barely grazed the ground where he had stood moments before. The human was quick, yes, but it was more than quickness, it was anticipation. Somehow he seemed to read her moves before she made them. Seralia's eyes narrowed. This was not supposed to happen. Every opponent had fallen in seconds. She had trained for centuries, faced countless warriors, and yet this human had survived. Her opening strike. She lunged again, faster this time, her blade slicing through the air like a comet. Elias ducked low, using his staff to sweep her legs, but she jumped over it effortlessly. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. Whispers spread quickly. "He's still standing, he's still moving." Adrenaline surged through Elias. He did not fight with the strength of his muscles, he fought with the strength of his mind. Every strike Seralia made, every feint and thrust, he analyzed. He waited for patterns, small tells in her movements, moments where even the fastest warrior might falter. Seralia was surprised. Humans were supposed to be weak, slow, predictable. Yet this human moved with precision, dodged with timing that rivaled even some young Thalorian cadets. She increased the intensity of her attacks, swinging her sword in wide arcs trying to overwhelm him. Elias responded with skill rather than power. He used rolls, twists, and quick jabs with his staff to deflect or block. He used the momentum of her strikes against her, redirecting her energy without ever needing to meet it head-on. It was a strange sight for the spectators, her glowing blade, a blur of motion, and the human moving like water, flowing around it without stopping. "The crowd murmured. How is he doing that?" One alien whispered to another. "No human can move like this." Seralia gritted her teeth. She was faster, stronger, and more experienced, yet the human survived every strike. She felt frustration for the first time in years during a duel. Frustration burned through her, fueling her next series of attacks. She spun, slashed, and lunged with every ounce of her skill. Elias blocked, parried, and dodged, but his muscles began to ache. Every movement demanded energy. Every reaction required focus. He could feel the strain, but he would not give up. Humans were built to endure, to keep moving even when the odds were impossible. That endurance was his secret. The battle moved across the arena like a dance of chaos. Seralia's strikes were precise and deadly, a combination of speed, skill, and raw power. Elias, smaller and weaker, did not strike to injure. He struck to survive, to create openings and test her reactions. Every dodge, every roll, every counterstrike was calculated. At one point, Saralia leapt high, aiming a strike from above, intending to end the fight in a single blow. Elias rolled forward, narrowly avoiding the blade, and used his staff to trip her legs. She fell to the ground, a flash of surprise crossing her face before she sprang back to her feet. The arena erupted into whispers and gasps. The human is still standing. Saralia's pride burned hotter than the arena lights. No one had ever resisted her for so long. She realized that this was not just a test of strength. It was a challenge to her understanding of combat itself. Humans did not rely on raw power. They relied on cunning, adaptability, and endurance, traits she had never respected. Elias felt the sweat on his brow, the ache in his arms and legs, but he also felt something stronger: determination. He remembered the stories of his ancestors, the humans who had faced impossible odds on Earth, the pioneers who had crossed oceans and survived disasters. Humanity survived because it never surrendered. With a deep breath, he shifted his strategy. Instead of just dodging, he began to anticipate not only her strikes, but her intentions. Small gestures, the tilt of her shoulder, the angle of her blade. He used them all to predict her next move, Saralia noticed. Her attacks became sharper, more unpredictable, but Elias adapted quickly. He was learning, thinking faster than anyone expected, moving in ways that seemed impossible for a human. The crowd, initially confident in their princess's victory, grew tense. The laughter had died. Now, they watched, breathless, as the impossible unfolded. The human was not just surviving, he was challenging her rhythm, forcing her to fight differently than she ever had. Minutes passed like hours. Sweat dripped from both fighters, their breathing heavy. Saralia's pride would not allow her to retreat, and Elias's courage would not allow him to yield. Finally, she paused for a moment, circling him cautiously. Her eyes, once filled with confidence, now contained a flicker of doubt. She had underestimated this human. Elias was not strong in the way Thalorians were strong, but he possessed something just as formidable: resilience, intelligence, and the refusal to fall. Elias steadied his staff, ready for the next strike. He did not smile, did not boast. He simply stood calm and unwavering, a human against a galaxy that expected him to break. The arena seemed to hold its breath. The duel had begun as entertainment, a demonstration of Thalorian superiority. Now, it had become something greater. It was a story in motion, a lesson unfolding before thousands of eyes. Humans were not weak. Humans could endure. Humans could surprise even the most skilled warriors in the galaxy. Saralia's eyes met his. She raised her blade again, a silent challenge passing between them. Elias tightened his grip, his mind sharp, his body ready. Both knew the battle was far from over, but one thing was clear to everyone watching. This human was unlike any opponent she had ever faced, and in that moment a seed of respect began to grow, though neither fighter would admit it yet. The first clash had ended, not with a victor, but with the recognition that humans could not be underestimated, and though both were exhausted, the fight would continue, and the galaxy would never forget this day. The sun hung high over the arena of Prime, casting sharp shadows across the polished ground. Sweat and dust clung to both fighters, evidence of a battle that had already lasted far longer than anyone expected. The crowd, initially confident of Saralia's instant victory, now watched in stunned silence. No human had ever resisted the Starblade Princess this long. Saralia's chest heaved as she circled her opponent. Each movement was precise, her glowing blade ready to strike in an instant. Yet she sensed something unfamiliar, a sharp awareness. In the human stance, a calm readiness that suggested he was not just reacting, but learning. Elias Ward, though smaller and weaker in raw power, had discovered his edge. His mind. Every strike, every feint, every movement Seralia made was being analyzed, remembered, and used against her. He had started noticing subtle patterns in her fighting style, the angle of her wrist, the tilt of her shoulders, the faint timing between her strikes. Each small detail became a chance to survive and perhaps even to gain the advantage. Seralia lunged again, faster than lightning, her sword aimed for Elias's head. He ducked just in time, rolling across the polished floor and springing to his feet. He swung his staff in a low arc, not to strike her, but to block the momentum of her next move. Sparks flew as metal clashed, the sound echoing through the arena. "2," crowd gasped. "He's still standing." Seralia's frustration grew. She had anticipated a brief duel, a show for the spectators, a simple demonstration of her superiority. But this human was different. He was not only surviving, he was forcing her to think differently, to adjust her attacks, to be careful in ways she had never been forced to before. With a swift motion, she leapt into the air, her blade glowing brighter. The energy around it hummed, a concentrated strike designed to overwhelm any opponent in seconds. Elias rolled forward, narrowly avoiding the downward slash. Then, in a move that surprised even him, he grabbed the edge of her armor as she landed, using her own momentum to roll her slightly off balance. The crowd erupted in whispers. "Did he just—" Seralia's eyes widened with surprise, but her pride would not allow her to falter. She leapt back, landing gracefully, and adjusted her stance. She realized something crucial. This human was not strong in the way Thalorians were. Strong, but he was clever. He did not strike to harm. He struck to create openings, to exploit mistakes, to survive. Elias, meanwhile, felt the strain of his movements. His muscles burned and sweat stung his eyes. Every dodge, every roll, every parry demanded complete focus. But he remembered his ancestors, those who had faced impossible odds on Earth. Explorers, pioneers, warriors. They had survived because they adapted, learned, and refused to give up. That same spirit now coursed through him. He feigned a stumble, drawing Seralia into a rush. She attacked without hesitation, confident she had seen through his move. But at the last second, Elias rolled aside and swung his staff upward, tapping her shin. It was not a strong strike. It would not even hurt most beings, but it disrupted her rhythm. For the first time, Seralia's attack was not perfectly timed. The arena fell silent. Whispers filled the stands. He is adapting. He is learning. A human is outsmarting the princess. Seralia's pride flared into anger. She struck faster, harder, her movements a blur of light and energy. Elias dodged, parried, and rolled with every ounce of skill he possessed. He was slower, yes, and weaker, but he was learning, thinking, and surviving, and that made him dangerous. At one point, Seralia tried an advanced move, a combination of a spinning strike and a downward stab that had never failed against anyone. Elias anticipated it, ducking and rolling under her swing. Then, using her momentum, he swept his staff lightly against the ground, tripping her momentarily. She landed on one knee, stunned for the briefest of moments. The crowd gasped again. Even some of the Thalorian nobles leaned forward, unable to hide their shock. Humans were supposed to be fragile, slow, predictable. Yet here was one standing, toe-to-toe with their greatest warrior. Elias took a moment to breathe. He was tired, yes, but his mind was sharper than ever. He realized the truth of the duel. It was not about strength alone, it was about endurance, creativity, and courage. He could not beat Seralia with raw power, but he could outthink her, outlast her, and survive her attacks. Seralia rose, her eyes narrowing. She now approached the human not with arrogance but with caution. She began testing him with feints, probing for weaknesses. Elias moved with him, dodging and countering, forcing her to adjust constantly. Neither fighter had gained a decisive advantage yet, but the pace was exhausting for both. Minutes passed, the sun climbing higher, shadows stretching longer across the arena. Sweat glistened on their faces, breathing heavy, muscles burning. The crowd remained silent, unable to predict the outcome. The human's endurance was proving a greater challenge than anyone had expected. Elias remembered a lesson from his training. Sometimes defense itself could be an attack. By staying calm, observing carefully and responding with precision, he could turn even Saralia's strength against her. He began using her momentum, her speed, and her arrogance as tools to survive. Saralia realized with a sinking feeling that the human's movements were not random. Each dodge, each block, each roll had purpose. He was learning faster than any Thalorian had expected a human to learn. He was adapting in real time, turning her strikes into obstacles she had to overcome, slowing her rhythm, forcing her to fight differently. The human edge was subtle but powerful. Strength alone would no longer win this duel. Elias feinted left, drawing Saralia into a strike. She lunged, expecting him to dodge right, but he rolled backward instead. At that moment, he lightly tapped her side with his staff, not to harm, only to test her reaction. She jumped back, startled, her rhythm momentarily broken. Elias seized the brief opening, stepping forward and planting his staff firmly, ready for the next move. The crowd whispered, awestruck. Humans were clever. Humans could endure. Humans could survive. Saralia's mind raced. She had faced thousands. Of warriors, none had resisted so well. None had adapted so quickly. Her pride fought against the realization that the human was not inferior. Perhaps, she thought, humans had strengths the Thalorians had not anticipated. Elias, meanwhile, focused on the battle. He did not have time for pride or fear. Every strike from Saralia was a test. Every motion she made was a puzzle. And he was solving it. He had no desire to defeat her yet. His goal was to survive, to last, to prove that humans could endure where others failed. The duel continued, the two moving in a deadly dance of speed, skill, and wits. The human, though physically weaker, had found an unexpected advantage: the ability to learn, adapt, and anticipate. Saralia, though stronger and faster, had to think harder than ever before. The crowd began to sense a shift. What was expected to be a quick show of Thalorian superiority had become a lesson in human resilience. Whispers spread. Perhaps humans are not weak. Perhaps humans are stronger than we thought. The duel ended the day's first hour without a victor, but one thing was clear to all. The human had survived, adapted, and found his edge. And for the first time, Saralia faced a question she had never considered. Could a human truly be a match for her skill? The arena of Thalor's Prime had become a stage not just for a duel, but for history in motion. Sweat and dust clung to both fighters, their breathing heavy, muscles burning. The crowd had shifted from laughter to stunned silence. The human, Elias. Ward was still standing, still moving, against the Starblade Princess, Saralia. It was a spectacle no one had expected, and it challenged every assumption the Thalorians had about humans. Saralia's chest heaved as she circled him carefully. Each strike she had attempted so far had been countered, dodged, or redirected. This human had learned her rhythm, adapted to her speed, and endured her attacks in a way no Thalorian ever had. She was growing frustrated, yet also intrigued. Elias, though smaller and weaker in raw strength, had discovered the truth of the battle. Endurance, creativity, and courage could outweigh sheer power. He had no advanced weapons, no alien enhancements, only his training, his instincts, and the unyielding human spirit. Every move he made now was a combination of strategy and survival. Saralia feinted to the left and lunged, swinging her glowing blade in a deadly arc. Elias rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding the strike. He tapped her sword lightly with his staff, not to hurt her, but to disrupt her flow. Saralia adjusted instantly, her eyes narrowing. She was fast, yes, and strong, yes, but she realized now that this human was not predictable. The crowd whispered in disbelief. He is still moving. He is still standing. Even the Thalorian nobles could not hide their astonishment. Humans were supposed to be fragile, slow, and weak. Yet here was one, not just surviving, but forcing their greatest warrior to fight differently. Seralia leapt into the air, spinning her blade in a dazzling display. The energy around it pulsed with power, meant to overwhelm any opponent instantly. Elias ducked, rolled, and used the staff to slide along the floor, narrowly avoiding the strike. He sprang to his feet and readied himself, his mind racing. He had to find a way to turn her strength into an opening. For the first time in the duel, Seralia felt a hint of doubt. This human was not only enduring, he was adapting, thinking faster than she expected. Her attacks had been met with not just survival, but clever counters. Her pride bristled. She had never faced an opponent who forced her to rethink her strategy mid-battle. Elias took a moment to breathe. His body was tired, his muscles aching, but his mind was sharper than ever. He observed Seralia closely, noticing small details, the tilt of her wrist, the timing between her attacks, the subtle shift of her weight before each strike. These small clues allowed him to anticipate her moves, to survive moments that should have ended the fight. He feigned a stumble, drawing Seralia in. She lunged, confident she had seen through his ploy, but he rolled aside at the last moment. Her blade cut the air where he had been standing just a heartbeat before. Elias struck, lightly with his staff, not to injure, only to maintain the rhythm of the duel. The arena fell silent again. Whispers spread like wildfire. He is learning. He is surviving. Humans were supposed to be weak. Humans were supposed to fall. Yet this one refused to yield. Seralia's strikes became sharper, more aggressive, more relentless. She unleashed a combination of spinning attacks, thrusts, and leaps that would have overwhelmed any ordinary opponent. Elias dodged, blocked, and rolled, but fatigue was setting in. His arms trembled, his legs burned, and sweat stung his eyes. Every movement demanded complete focus, and every second of distraction could be fatal. Yet he endured. Humans were built to survive impossible odds, to keep moving even when the world seemed against them. That endurance now became his weapon. He began to notice small patterns in Seralia's attack. She was powerful, yes, but her reliance on speed and strength meant she sometimes overextended. Elias began to exploit these moments. When she leapt too far, he rolled beneath her, redirecting her energy. When she swung too wide, he ducked and countered lightly with his staff to maintain balance and control. The crowd watched in awe. The duel was no longer entertainment, it was a lesson. Humans could endure. Humans could adapt. Humans could surprise even the most skilled warriors in the galaxy. Seralia felt a surge of frustration and respect. She had underestimated humans, underestimated this human. Her attacks were precise, but Elias moved with purpose and insight. She realized that her usual strength would not win this fight. She needed more than muscle. She needed strategy, patience, and perhaps even humility. The duel escalated. Seralia unleashed her most advanced techniques, combining speed, power, and precision. Elias matched her with careful defense, feints, and timing. He had no hope of overpowering her, but he had discovered a greater truth. Humans could endure longer, think faster, and adapt more creatively than anyone expected. He feigned another stumble, drawing her into an attack. She lunged, spinning her blade. He ducked, rolled, and used her momentum to glide past her, tapping her side lightly with his staff. She staggered slightly, surprised by the human's agility and quick thinking. The crowd gasped. The human is still moving. Seralia's frustration grew, but so did her intrigue. She had faced countless warriors, yet none had resisted so well. None had adapted mid-fight, learned her patterns, or endured as he did. Her pride demanded victory, but her mind was forced to acknowledge a new reality. Humans had an unexpected edge, not in strength, but in resilience and intelligence. Elias, sensing an opening, pressed forward cautiously. He did not attack to harm. He attacked to survive, to create moments where Seralia had to adjust, to force her into small mistakes. Each motion was calculated, each step precise. He relied on his instincts and experience, adapting faster than the eye could follow. Minutes passed like hours. Both fighters were exhausted, yet neither would yield. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the arena. Sweat dripped from their faces. Dust and energy filled the air, and the crowd remained silent, unable to predict what would happen next. For the first time, Seralia felt uncertainty. She had never doubted victory, but now she realized the human might not only survive, he might continue to challenge her, to push her limits, to endure longer than any warrior had before. Elias felt the strain of the duel, yet his determination only grew stronger. Every strike from Seralia tested him. Every feint challenged him, but he adapted, survived, and endured. He was proving not just to her, but to the galaxy, that humans were not weak. Humans could survive, adapt, and overcome where others might fail. The duel had become a battle of wills as much as skill. Strength alone would not decide the outcome. It would be endurance, intelligence, and courage that determined who would stand at the end. And in that moment, both fighters understood the truth. The human had survived longer than anyone had predicted, and the Thalorian princess had met a foe unlike any she had faced before. The struggle was far from over, but the duel had already changed the expectations of all who watched. The human edge had revealed itself, not in strength, but in survival, in adaptability, in courage. The Thalorian Empire had underestimated humans, and now they were learning a lesson they would never forget.